Welcome back to our ValueByte series. We are here and very excited to talk to Susan Bryant, which some of you probably already know. I know she's pretty out and about in the community and active on LinkedIn connections as well. So we're really excited to talk to you, Susan, about diving in a little bit more on the topic of business performance and really business performance checkup. Like, how can you know what the state of your business is in? And so before we dive in and get some of your insights, tell folks a little bit about what you do and how you work with business owners.
Okay, well, awesome. Well, thanks for having me on the show today. Super excited to be here. So again, my name is Susan Bryant. I'm a CPA and certified tax planner. I work with business owners to help them to think more strategically about their business finances and relate all of that back to accounting, tax, and their overall financial picture, especially growing their personal net worth. So that's what I do.
Awesome. So to kick us off here, what are some of the challenges that you see business owners facing when it comes time to assess their business performance? I'm sure that even just business performance can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but what are some of those common challenges that you help your clients with?
Yeah, so depending on the size of business, for the smaller businesses, I think their biggest challenge is just getting the accounting done. Most of them don't even have accounting records to speak of, or if they do, they're very primitive and maybe they're not updated on a regular basis. So I would say for the smaller businesses, that's usually their biggest challenge, is really building the discipline around their accounting function. For those larger businesses, it's more of the forward-looking work. It's doing that forecasting, the piece that gets them thinking more strategically about the future and what is coming next, and being able to think and predict their next 3, 4, 5 moves ahead. And so those are two totally different problems to have. And not to say small businesses don't have that, but they're usually in crisis mode, just trying to get the basics done. And that's where they struggle the most.
Absolutely. I think, being in crisis mode and being so reactionary, right? If you haven't taken the time to really create a strategic plan, not only for yourself, not only for your business, but for yourself as a business owner, it can make things a little chaotic, right? And that crisis really comes to the top. I think sometimes as owners, it can be really challenging to figure out what I should be measuring, and that ultimately can cause some of the confusion and I think avoidance, right? Like if we don't have clarity, we might procrastinate taking the time to do that performance check-in.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about a performance check-in, performance indicators are a huge part of that. And I think KPIs, those key performance indicators, are something that are always coming up, and oftentimes there's too many to measure. So when you think about your expertise and your experience, if you had to just highlight those top 2 to 3 performance indicators that you feel like can help an owner get on track and maybe move out of that crisis mentality, what would you say that is?
Well, number one is profit, looking at your profit and loss, your income statement. I mean, are you making money is the number one thing, like based on what you're selling, revenues, are they exceeding expenses? I mean, you really got to spend some time. There's business owners who don't even look at that. They don't even pull their financial statements. To me, that's absolutely crazy, but I would start there. And then the secondary piece of that is cash. How am I utilizing my cash? Am I producing more cash from my operations than I am from any other, like loan proceeds or from capital contributions? Like, where is the money coming from in my business? Those two things are key, because honestly, money solves most business problems. If you've got cash and you're making money, you don't have, it will solve a lot of problems. I'm not saying you don't have any problems, but if you've got plenty of sales that are, you're off the charts there and you've got plenty of cash, generally speaking, you can start to solve other business problems pretty easily. So that's where I would start.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to focus on. And like you said, it's really hard to solve problems when you don't have the cash to put into those problems. And so that's a whole other issue on its own. Is there an example or a story you can tell us of when you've helped a business owner kind of do some of these performance checkup things, look at their cash flow, understand where the money's really coming from, and if they're profitable? What are some impacts that can make on an owner? Or is there a specific story you can share of how that's really impacted a business or a business owner?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to a couple of different things. So usually when there is some type of performance issue, it's sort of like peeling back those layers of the onion. We all talk about that in business, right? There's always some underlying symptom of a problem. So we worked last year, started working with a dentist. And, she was really kind of having these challenges like, oh my gosh, it just feels so difficult. And like the performance of the business wasn't very good. And what it really boiled down to is that she had an associate dentist who was really not very good, not very efficient. It was she had to go back and redo a lot of her work. And so it was like, we started asking more questions about what's going on with the financials, it really led to, we have a operational issue, a performance issue, and that needed to change. So that's an example of like, I think sometimes the business owners are really quick to be like, well, it's this problem. You really have to take the time to sit down and really think long and hard and ask all the right questions of yourself, and especially having another person to ask you and help guide that conversation, really understanding what is happening in the business that's causing that issue. I mean, most businesses don't lose money just to lose money. There is something going on that's wrong in
Yeah.
there, so it's really getting to what that is. And since then, that dentist has made the change, that associate is gone. There's a new associate. And now all of a sudden the world is a lot different, right? So that change prompted better financial performance. That's the type of thing that I think most business owners, they think that the accounting records are just like a necessary evil. Oh, we've just got to have this just to have it, like to file tax returns or something like that. But really, it's a story about what's happening in your business.
Mhm.
And sometimes business owners don't want to see the story that's there. There's little hard things for them to do. That was a tough conversation, tough change to make in a business. But really, at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself what's best for the business. And that's what you got to make decisions based on.
Yeah, I love that idea of looking under the hood to see like where the problems really are. We see that all the time in our world with marketing. It's like every person we talk to thinks they need more leads. Leads are always the problem that people want to focus on in marketing. And at the end of the day, it's usually those operational issues. It's how are you running your processes? What are you doing with people after you bring them in the front door?
Yeah.
And so it sounds like you do a lot of similar things to us and really exposing where are those problems, where are the opportunities, and without taking that really deep look, you're never going to know that. And you might
Right.
just keep funneling money into a bad associate or a bad process or something that's really just going to drive you into the ground if you don't identify it and fix it.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys, see the same thing. I mean, they want more sales, right? At the end of the day,
Mhm.
you want to make more money, you want to have more sales. I mean, this is all what every business owner really needs. I'd say you get more cash, right? Is revenue. Um, but you're right. If you are not acting on, if you have a bad sales process or you have a bad follow through or a bad customer experience, guess what? You're not going to keep those customers.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, that shows up on your financials because it's so much harder to replace a customer once you get one. And so, yeah, I think these are not necessarily things that business owners, it's not that they're not thinking about it. It's just they're moving so fast. They just don't have time to stop and think. And that's one of the things I have to tell these business owners, like, I need you to slow down so you can go fast. But right now you're going to have to slow down just a little bit so we can build these processes and look deeply at the financials, really talk about what it is you want to build here, the intentional, like being intentional about the business. And then once you get that figured out, boom, now we can step on the gas pedal and we can go.
Right.
They're just so scattered and so many different things going on. And like, oh, I'm going to start another business and another business. And like,
Okay,
yeah,
now I feel personally
yeah.
attacked.
Time.
All right, Randy, get us back on track before I
So-
start going down the wormhole of my
I know
own
we could
issues.
talk all day. So I think we've talked a little bit about the reactionary and kind of the chaos that can ensue. So what would be some ways that you feel like businesses can identify and address areas of inefficiency and waste in order to improve that profitability as part of their performance checkup?
Well, I know this is probably going to leave like a bad word to a lot of people, but that budget thing is really handy because it makes you think like, I plan to spend X and now I'm making a decision to spend Y. Do I really want to do that? And so the budget, I think, is really important. I think anything that's on some type of recurring subscription basis, you've got to be tracking that and make sure that you know what it is you're paying for. Are you still using it? I mean, those things can get out of control so fast. Really thinking about how you're utilizing your people. I mean, for most businesses, staffing is one of their most expensive resources. So are you utilizing your people all in the right way? Is there a way to use them better? Is there something more somebody could be doing? And then similar to that, like you're thinking about like all the benefits. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times we start talking to a business owner and we look at the health insurance bill and it's like, that person left last year. I thought we canceled that. Whoa, we've been paying for their health insurance like an entire year and they don't work here anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like building in those checks, controls, making sure that you really have all the right resources focused on the most expensive items on that P&L and monitoring and managing them to get the most out of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you just kind of answered the next question I was going to get into, which is kind of, if you only have time to focus on one thing, where do you start? It sounds like that. The biggest items, where's the biggest amount of your cash flow going, which makes sense, right? It's
Yeah.
probably easier to focus on the little things because those are easier to fix than the big issues. But to kind of take that a step further, if somebody just had time to focus on one thing like this week to start getting healthy in their business, whether it be cash flow or tax planning or hitting some of those, really big expenditures in their cash flow statements, what would be the one thing you would say, okay, buckle down and focus on this week?
Man, that's a tough question because every business
No,
is
it's
so
also
different.
important.
I will say this, taxes are your single largest expense for any individual, whether you're a business owner or not. So, I mean, we don't really spend 35% of our income on anything else, not
Mhm.
our mortgages, not food, not our cars, but to spend 35% of your income on taxes, that's a big chunk of your money going out the door. So I say that if you can cut your taxes by going through effective tax planning and really making sure that you're being intentional on that front, then you're keeping more money working for you in your business or you're keeping more money working for you as an individual investor in some way. So I say start there. That's a natural place. If you've just been overpaying because you just didn't know what to do, that's a great way for you to start saving immediate cash and making, that cash work for you in a different way.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. That's such a great, quick assessment, right, of ways that you can start adding that value and being intentional in what you're doing as an owner. So kind of in final thoughts in closing, I know obviously we can only establish the baseline and really just encourage folks to take time to create a plan for themselves in order to do a performance review. But when people are going in and taking the time to put together a business performance checkup, how can these owners, these entrepreneurs really identify what the potential growth opportunities are? What are some key things? I know it might be a little bit of pulling in some of the aspects that we've already talked about, but what would you highlight as the top takeaway for growth opportunities?
Revenue. revenue, look at your revenue, look at it in every possible way. What is recurring? What can you put on subscription? What are you selling the most of? What are you selling the least of? Where do you make the most money in terms of margin? Where do you make the least money? How can you bundle things? What's the best way to offer something? Really ties into what you guys do on like the marketing. How do we position this in the marketplace? What problems does it solve? And I mean, revenue is the key. I mean, you're going to sell your way to a more profitable business. You're not going to cut expenses the way to a more successful business. That's just all there is to it. So revenue is the key. And so you've got to be focused and be thinking about how to grow that revenue. And there's a ton of, different ways to structure things. I think sometimes business owners, they get very, I don't know, there's like this Reddit thinking where it's like, well, that's how I've always done it. So I have to bill everything after. I can't bill it up front. Well, why not? Well, because just nobody does it that way. Okay, well, be the first person to do it that way.
Right.
It's like they want to challenge. The entrepreneur wants to challenge the system, but then they don't want anybody to challenge them. Like in a way, but that's the way I do it. Like, okay, well, what I want them to do is I want them to challenge themselves in thinking like, is there a better way I could be doing this? Is there a better way for me to sell it, price it, position it, all the things, right, to make it better for the client? Sometimes people are just undercharging. They offer great things and they just don't charge enough. And so they wonder why they don't make money. It's like, it's worth more,
Right.
I really love in the book, How to Be a Badass by Jen Sincero.
I love that book. Jen
Great
is
book.
great.
I love how she says, like, just see what you can get away with. That's what you're going to be thinking about when it comes to revenue. Just see what you can get away with. If somebody's willing to pay it, they're willing to pay it. Go for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you never know until you test it, right?
Right.
And until people are saying no, you're probably too low. You got to raise your prices till people push back a little bit. But I feel like that and tax planning and all these other things we could go off on like a whole tangent about. But I want to keep our time here so that we're considerate of your time and our listeners' time. So folks who want to know more about Unboxed Advisors, they want to connect with you. Maybe they're hearing these things and going, oh my gosh, I need Susan's help so badly. Where can they find you, connect with you, and learn more about your business?
Yeah, well, hit me up on LinkedIn. You'll find me there. And then, check us out at unboxedadvisors.com. Always happy to be a resource, sounding board to business owners. I love working with them. They are amazing individuals they're so special. So come connect with me, hit me up, let's start a conversation, and let's help you build the business that you've always dreamt of.
Awesome. Thank you again so much, Susan. It was wonderful having you on today.
Thank you, Susan.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Great chatting with you today.
You too.